So, we said today, Tech Tip Tuesday, so Leah's going to talk to you about some interesting machine technique, not just the horrible stuff, what happens when my thread's not working. Leah, you ready?
Yeah. Maybe.
All right, well.
Yes, we're close.
All right.
We'll adjust as we go, because Tech Tip Tuesday.
I'm gonna let Leah go on the fly here. Okay, Leah.
Okay.
All yours. I'm gonna bail.
So, guys, we're talking ruffles and gathering today. So I'm just going to sit here and panic for a minute because I sort of tested everything in the last 2 minutes and it didn't go quite like I wanted. So we're going to keep testing and make magic happen. So for gathering and ruffling, they're similar but different. So the rufflers that are available, the ruffler for Bernina is a number 86 for the new machines. So that's everything that takes the white box feet. There's 2 versions of this, so you need to make sure you get the right one that will fit your machines. The 7 and 8 series with the dual feed take a different ruffler than the rest of the series. So that's number 86. For Brother, your ruffler is part number SA565C. And then we have a couple older style rufflers. This one has, oh, that's a Bernina part number. This probably fits a red box machine, so that would be like the 1000 series. And you'll need a shank adapter, which will be 77 or 75. And I think that's the deal with this one as well. So let us know what machine you have and we'll make sure you get the right ruffler for what you need. Because different part numbers and different packaging makes us all a little crazy. The other option is a traditional gathering foot. So they just different ball games between the two. And then you can also gather on a serger, but I am not nearly organized enough to show you guys that today, so I apologize. So anything that you want to gather or ruffle, I would test first and get all your settings sorted out, because it's a tension game and a stitch length game to get these things to work as they should. So this sample is not labeled. I think that's done with a gathering foot, but it's not labeled, so I don't know. However, Anna's left samples that are labeled, so we'll start looking at those. So this is a ruffler. Rufflers, you have different options of how often they make a ruffle, and then you can adjust stitch length and tension to get kind of a different amount of ruffling. Really close together, a little further apart, kind of consistent. Ruffler every 6. 1.5 stitch length, I think is what that says. And then if you want really, really close, tight little ruffles, a ruffler going every stitch, every 1 stitch, will give you something like this. And again, you can change your stitch length as you go to get a different effect. Kind of makes sense. So we're just going to play with these. You guys get to watch me sew today. And it might go smoothly and it might really not go smoothly. But I'll show you what you're looking for when you're reading these instructions on these packages. And then the other option is a traditional gathering foot. So I think we'll start with the gathering foot because it's your least expensive option. And it might do what you need it to do, but it might not. So then we'll talk about why you might go to something else. Come with me, let's go for a walk to a new machine. So I grabbed one of our little trade-ins because it was close by and the right size. It was a Bernina 635 that would like to find a forever home. And this is the 16 foot. The 16 foot's a weird little foot where it has this opening in the front. It looks like a sandwich. And then it's got not very much that sits right on the back feed dogs. So there's 2 versions of this. There's a 16 and a 16C. So the 16C is just wider through that front part. It goes on like a normal Bernina foot. And then Bernina has this really great system. If you're ever wondering how a specific foot works, for both Bernina and Brother, there's usually a video that will describe what you need to know. So in here, it's kind of showing two different options. You can gather something to another piece by having one piece through that little sandwich part of the foot and then one piece underneath. Or you can just make gathers in one piece and you put the fabric below the sandwich layer. Does that make sense? And then you can adjust stitch length and your tension to play around with this. So this is one of those cases, guys, where you need to know where your tension dial is and not be afraid of it. I've got a long piece of Kona, one of my Service Bay bits of fabric. So if I want to gather this, our default stitch length on this machine is 2.5. So how about we start there? And our default tension is 4. The red line's at 4 on the top of this one. So this was a mechanical tension. And I'm just gonna leave those tails alone because I don't think this machine has a lock stitch. You know those days where you feel like you need another hand because you don't remember how you got here? So with this regular stitch length and kind of regular tension, not much is happening. It's not very exciting. So regular stitch length, regular tension, not much is happening on this. I'm going to go up to a stitch length of 4. And you're getting more of a visible gather. And then you can have the fabric in the groove or not in the groove. There's 2 options. If I wanted to add a second piece in and gather one to the other, we could add a second piece in on top. And I'm going to increase my tension a little bit. So tighter tension, longer stitch length, you'll get more of a ruffle gather happening. And that's nice and secured and nice and consistent. And it's just like a light, loose gather. So that's your first option. So here, we add one piece in there. So piece underneath the sandwichy thing and a piece on top. And then let's see what happens. So what this is doing, it's gathering the bottom layer. So with one piece on top, the piece through the sandwichy bit doesn't get ruffled, just the piece underneath does. So this would be something if you wanted to gather something to something else, you have a flat piece and a gathered piece, which is kind of fun. So that's how the 16 foot works. So again, it's the weird flat one. And there's 2 sizes for it. And there might be something comparable in Brother, but off the top of my head, I have no idea. So yeah, you can do some fun stuff. With that, let's go show you a ruffler and show you the difference between the 2. There's 2 versions of the ruffler, so you need to buy the right one Anna and I both sew on our Berninas at home, and we both embroider on our brothers. So I'm more comfortable sewing on the Bernina, and Bernina's got a much broader range of fancy feet, and brother has similar things, but not as many, if that makes sense. So a ruffler, when you're buying it, they're a riot. Rufflers are a riot. You need to make sure you're getting the right one on a Bernina for the series of machine that you have. So they have different colored dots in it. There will be different SKUs on the box to denote these two slightly different rufflers. So make sure you're getting the one that will fit your machine appropriately. I was going to ruffle on that 635, but the ruffler that's back here is for the 7 series. So that's where I'm starting. When you get your ruffler, let me show you what you're looking at. So the ruffler, what it does is this loopy part here hooks over your needle bar. So as the needle bar is going up and down, it's pushing fabric through here. And you can either have it programmed, not really programmed, but geared so that it does a ruffle every single stitch, every 6 stitches, or every 12, or 0, which doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to go to 0. I would switch out and put a regular foot back on. Okay, ruffler every 6. And ruffler every 1. So what you're looking at here is on this every 6th stitch, it's 6 tiny little stitches, and then it pushes some fabric under the needle. 6 stitches, pushes the fabric under the needle. On every single stitch, takes a stitch, pushes the fabric under the needle. Takes a stitch, pushes essentially a fold underneath the needle. It's magic. Rufflers are fun, guys, because you can get very, very consistent. So when it goes on, again, that thing goes over your needle bar clamp. Which the first time you try and put this on, it's similar to putting a walking foot on, and you might feel like you need 3 hands. And then where you're putting your fabric on this, you can refer to your fancy book. So when this is moving, this is going to look, I'm going to wiggle through here. And I'm going to go up in stitch length. We could probably start with the lower one. I'm going to start there. We'll start at default. So it's pushing fabric with every single stitch. You don't want to run this foot really fast. It will not like that very much. So that is every 6 stitches, and it's quite, or every single stitch. So it's quite a tight ruffle, which is, it's cute. That's fun. To switch to doing more ruffles, oh no, we can make longer ones. So longer stitch length, and these are, they're almost looking like pleats at this point. So we could go every 6th stitch. We'll do that for a little ways. You can do this right at the edge of fabric or down the middle. So it's counting every 6, and then it does pushes that fabric underneath. So it's a very different look than every single stitch. Those are nice flat plates. You can also adjust the screw on the front here allows you to adjust how far it's pushing with each push. And then if we want to switch up to every 12th stitch, we can go to every 12th stitch. And this is definitely a tool that I would check and test before using it on your final project. Just because every fabric behaves a little bit differently. So tech tip Tuesday. Sometimes if your needle breaks or thread breaks and you don't know why, go back and check your spool. I don't really have this set up entirely right now because I don't have the foam pad that this should be sitting on. But that upper thread got really tight, and when I tried to pull on it to rethread, it won't turn. So it's stuck in the notch at the bottom of this spool. And it's stuck really good. There we go. So sometimes you might need to flip how your thread's sitting on the machine. So that little notch was down at the bottom, and the thread, that's what the thread got caught on. So you want to make sure that you're not tying yourself in knots on your spools. And sometimes these stack wound spools like to dribble thread all over the place. So that's turning nice and smooth now. So pretty funky foot, isn't it? So as you're turning, when it gets to the one on here, that's the magical 12th one, it'll send that blade piece down. Cool, huh? Pretty fun. So things that you might want to do when you've got things ruffled. My guess is you aren't going to just leave them all balled up on your table like this after you make some ruffles. You'll need to attach them to something. So you might be sewing them on as an embellishment on their own, or you might, let's see some of the samples Anne's got here. This particular bag is an embroidery design. So this particular pattern is a quilting in the hoop project for embroidery pattern from Pickle Pie Designs. So it actually, from what I recall, the gather on here you actually make before you add it into the embroidery. Is there other than the 16 and the ruffler, is there another way to gather? Oh, like gathering over a cord.
Oh yeah, Bernina uses their
39.
number 3 buttonhole foot. Okay, so in this screen here, it's this stitch, number 12. And when you ask the machine what number 12 is.
Oh, gathering with shearing elastics or cords using the 3C foot.
Yeah, so, and other people can do it on their machine.
I have it set for straight stitch right now because I had the ruffler on there.
So I'm gonna just increase it in size so that people can see it. So it kind of has this weird mountainy shape that goes right and left. The trick is it will catch 2 cords under each zigzag. You can't grab a single cord up the middle because that's where the stitch forms. So it's like zigzagging to the left and to the right at the same time, if that makes sense. So we'll tell it that we have a regular plate, and then we could just stitch it out.
this would gather over 2 cords.
Yeah.
Oh, and the channel in the foot would hold the cords in place.
Yeah. So there'd be a cord under this zigzag here and a cord under that zigzag there. And so and you make it really wide. And then the reason you use the buttonhole foot is because it has 2 channels that hold the cord in place.
Gotcha.
But a pin tuck foot would also do the same, or if you were really careful with a applique foot. But you catch a cord under that zigzag and a cord under this zigzag, and then you can pull the both of them. And it's really good for it's really good for stuff that's really hard to gather, really thick. Because if you use a good strong thread, poly or something in the machine, and then you can go over dental floss, you can go over heavy buttonhole cord, small butcher's twine, pearl cotton, those sorts of things. And then when you pull it, it works pretty good for really nasty stuff, heavy stuff.
Gail says sleeves. Can you use the ruffler to ruffle something onto something else?
Oh yeah. You have to test. I think Leah told you that, because you need to know how thick or how light to have your ruffles, so that when you're done, will they fit on what you want to fit them on. But as you can see, it went from barely gathered to ridiculously gathered. So depending what you're looking for. Remember, people who test and those who wish they had. You can do your ruffles on the edge like this. You can do your gathering up the middle like this. And then like this pillow cover on the bottom, you can lay it down and stitch it through the middle. I did a satin stitch over this one just to hide the stitching, and it matched the thread I used up here. This one I didn't. It's just stitching, just a nice light cream, just kind of blended away. Wasn't too worried about it. Then an alternate, and this is again samples, you guys. I did a fancy decorative stitch in a dark color over the gathering cord in the middle. And this is ruffles sewn to a side, and with a little edge top stitch, which helps if that was a hem. It helps to keep it hanging and nice and flat. So a little top stitch on the edge. It's all in details. Here's a 1/4 inch top stitch, so it looks a little different. Now things gather quite differently if they're like this piece of fabric, which is just one layer. See, it's the wrong side, right side, and then I just did a serged edge. But on this edge, it's a double piece of fabric, you see? Folded in half, there's the end. When it's thicker, it won't be the same settings as this side. You'll get entirely different results based on singles versus doubles. Now, the piece that's between the blades here, this is the piece that's going to gather. The piece on the bottom should be under everything, and it won't gather. And I can tell you that some of the treadle machines had way better instructions on how to use these than there are available now. And I heard Leah saying, go slow. Yeah, when you're doing anything with a special foot, a specialty item, go careful. And resist the urge to pull back on the piece being gathered, because it'll look funny. It doesn't take much, and people have torn off the little teeth on the ruffler foot over the years. I've seen people. All right, so pull her out, Leah. Let's see how you did. So see, there's the every stitch versus every 6. And don't resist the pleating. Do you want to pop it off for me?
Yeah.
So that little black blade has teeth, and people break them by pulling, not letting the foot do its thing.
And take care, and we'll do something tomorrow.
Weird Wednesday.
Yeah.
I know it's Weird Wednesday tomorrow. That weirdo. Say Say goodbye, weirdo.
Bye.
We'll see you guys tomorrow.